Garçon, you say, on Negre Maron. Well, if you heard that in Creole said to you, you probably would want to start a fight. Because when somebody called you a Negre Maron in Creole, it meant that you were uncivilized, ignorant, uncouth. It was kind of like a slur. So, as the Creole explanation, Negre Maron, neg being black or negro, and Maron meaning runaway. Traditionally, or the definition of maroon would be a castaway or a stranded person on an island or in an area, maroon. Not the band Maroon 5, but I digress. But yes, Negre Maron is a Creole cultural word. It is also said in Haiti too. But Negre Maron is really a freedom fighter. Negre Maron was defined basically as a maroon. A maroon is a runaway or an escaped person from enslavement living in the mountains and coming down onto the plantations to perform raids and helping other enslaved people escape into freedom. That would have been the idea of a maroon. Famous maroons would have been Cujo and Nani. The Jamaicans are well known for their documented history of their maroon populations. But maroon kind of gives you the idea that it is more of a freedom fighter. I started off with explaining the Creole example of when you were called a Negre Maron, meaning that the connotation from what we understood was meant to be uncivilized, uncouth, or ignorant. You didn't want to be called a Negre Maron. But when you associate Negre Maron with the real idea of a freedom fighter, a maroon, you begin to understand the depth of the word, maroon or Negre Maron. So apparently, in St. Lucia, Creole culture, Negre Maron is associated with Maroons. You can make an association with Maroons from the two words Negre Maron or black maroon, black runaway. So basically, we will do a little breakdown of the idea of the Maroon culture that existed in the Caribbean during colonization. This is just a tidbit or a starter because there's lots of information that you can find out there about Maroons. The Jamaican Maroons, as I said, are probably the most popular of them all. So you have, for example, Cujo and Nani, Queen Nani, as I explained, who are well known in the Jamaican folklore of Maroonage or Maroon people who fought against enslavement and set up their own Maroon colonies up in the mountains and fought against the British over many, many years, succeeding to the point where treaties had to be signed. There were even Maroons who were exiled to Nova Scotia, Canada, after they were betrayed, after fighting years against the British. So Maroons were also known as Cimarrons. Cimarron would be wild in Spanish, or the Spanish called the Maroons Cimarron. Some of the famous Maroons from the Dominican Republic would have been like Sebastian Lambert, Vaquero, Diego de los Guzman, and Del Campo. So you see, there's different Maroon colonies or Maroon leaders and Maroon groupings in the whole of the Caribbean. There were Maroon groups in Brazil, in Suriname, in Cuba, in Puerto Rico. The English pirate or privateer, they like to call him Sir Francis Drake. Well, he was knighted. But he actually, in 1655, recruited some Cimarrons, which he wrote as Cimarrones, during his raid on the Spanish. So these freedom fighters were very good at guerrilla warfare. Francis Drake used them in his invasion of the Spanish fleets or the Spanish towns for the British. So We started off with Negre Maron from St Lucia Creole, which was a very popular derogatory phrase that you could have heard while growing up. And you can make an association that it meant maroon, and maroons now we can say truly were freedom fighters. Now the Maroons were made up of not only escaped slaves, but they were also remnants of Caribs, or even the mixture of escaped slaves and Caribs, or even people in general who just did not want to be part of the crown establishment. But they were mostly made up of escaped slaves, and in the Southern Caribbean you would have some natives like Tainos or Kalinagos mixed with black, or some in the Maroons as well. So then you have also, you get to know that the Spanish town Maroons would set up what were called palenques, and then you can, if you search palenques, you can get an understanding of how that is associated with Maroon cultures. Some of the people who were instrumental in bringing militarized tradition to the Maroons would have been groups that were taken out of West Africa, like the Fanti or the Comorante, which were highly militarized groups. So they brought that fighting spirit into the colonies when they were captured and enslaved and brought to the Americans. So subsequently escaping, these groups brought their military style of fighting with them into the mountains, where they would escape and set up Maroon settlements into the mountains away from the plantations and raid the plantations. And they had plenty of wars going on. A very famous Maroon from Haiti would be Francois Macandal, a Haitian. He was considered to be a voodoo priest, you know, and he spent about 6 years destabilizing and fighting against the plantation owners before the Haitian Revolution actually started. So he was one of those in the back fomenting and causing all those things to happen. So there you can see that from Cuba to Puerto Rico, all the way down to Brazil, and on the coast, Venezuela, Colombia, there were Suriname, there were Maroon colonies. So Maroon, the culture of Maroon, is clear that it was in St Lucia, a small Creole island, but it was called a Negre Maron. But it can be associated very easily, as you can tell, with Maroons. Lastly, I would like to point out that there is a word called Marranos. Now, Marranos predates Cimarrons, Maroons, Negre Maron, because Marranos actually means a secret Jew. So I say this to kind of put that word in the grouping. If Negre Maron can be understood to be part of something associated with Maroon culture, it is very possible that Marranos, which is considered a secret Jew, Marranos, which you can check out as well, do your research on that, was what happened during the Spanish Inquisition right after the expulsion of the Moors out of the Iberian Peninsula. Then there was edicts from the popes and edicts from the kings, and going on in the Iberian Peninsula about people practicing Judaism. And so they were either expelled or faced a very drastic fate, right? But the word Marranos is associated with people who were either said to be Roman Catholic but were secretly practicing Judaism. But it is quite easy to see the linkages between the words Negre Maron, Maroons, and Marranos and Cimarrons. So it's possible that there are quite linkages in there, but this is just tidbits so you can go out there and do your research and put things together, or just find out more information as well. So also there is historical documents that states that quite a few of those Marranos, or people who were practicing Judaism during the times of these upheavals and the expulsions, made their way to out of the Iberian Peninsula and ended up in the Caribbean, in colonies where they felt safer. There was a gentleman by the name of Carvajal in the 16th century, 16th or 17th century, who had lots of trading and shipping in the West Indies as well. So it is believed that some traders of who were practicing Judaism were also trying to help escapees out of the Iberian Peninsula, out of Europe in general, to escape to the New World. And so Marranos kind of gives you that idea of people who were practicing Judaism but secretly. But you can see the association: Marranos, Maroon, Cimarron, and Negre Maron.